Under the streetlights, the rematch. The call-out. Night had fallen on the city, draping the street in a patchwork of shadows and neon glow. Under a buzzing streetlight at the corner, Jake Paul stood firm in his bright red tracksuit, chest heaving with adrenaline. A crowd had gathered in a ragged circle around him, their breath fogging in the cool night air as dozens of phones hovered in the dark like fireflies. The LED lights from the cameras bathed the scene in stark white flashes, illuminating wisps of smoke that curled from a nearby food cart and the lingering haze of exhaust from idling cars. In the middle of it all, Jake's eyes were locked onto a single figure, Mike Tyson, who loomed just a few paces away, calm but intense. Jake's voice cut through the murmurs of the onlookers. "Tyson," he shouted, pointing a gloved finger toward the heavyweight legend. "I'm right here. You wanted me humbled? Come finish the job." His tone dripped with bravado, each word echoing off the brick walls of the nearby storefronts. The crowd erupted in a mix of gasps and cheers at his audacity. People jostled for a better view, arms already raised with phones recording. The night was alive with anticipation, every face illuminated by the bluish glow of screens. Tyson stepped forward into the flickering cone of streetlight. His broad shoulders and face, a familiar silhouette to anyone who knew boxing, were cast half in light, half in shadow. Unlike the younger man's flashy outfit, Tyson wore a simple black hoodie and jeans, attire that belied the coiled power in his compact frame. He clenched and unclenched his fists slowly, a measured motion. There was restraint in Tyson's eyes, but also a spark that could ignite at any moment. He regarded Jake with a level stare, saying nothing at first and letting the tension build. Jake took a step closer, the scuff of his sneaker on pavement strangely loud in the hush. Outwardly, he held a confident posture, chin raised, shoulders squared, but inside, his heart was thrumming in his chest. This is it, he thought, adrenaline making his limbs feel light and electric. He had orchestrated this confrontation, but even he was surprised by how quickly it drew a crowd. In the front row of onlookers, a few familiar faces from local gyms and streaming crews were filming live. He caught the reflection of his own determined scowl on a dozen tiny phone screens. "Come on, old man," Jake taunted, curling his lips into a cocky grin that masked the quiver in his gut. "You got lucky last time. Let's see if you can do it without referees and rules." His words hung in the air, bold and irretrievable. A ripple went through the crowd, a collective ooh at his nerve. Tyson's expression remained unchanged at the insult. Only those closest might have seen a muscle tighten in his jaw. He exhaled slowly, a cloud of vapor in the cold night. When he finally spoke, his voice was low and steady, yet it carried. "You don't know what you're asking for, kid," Tyson said, shaking his head just slightly. The calm in his tone was more chilling than any shout. "Not here, not like this. Go home." A few in the crowd murmured agreement, and one of Jake's friends in a gray jacket hovered at his side, placing a hand on Jake's arm. "Bro, chill," the friend urged under his breath, eyes darting between Jake and Tyson. But Jake shrugged him off, pride and adrenaline overriding caution. He couldn't back down now, not after calling Tyson out in front of everyone. Jake spread his arms wide to the spectators, raising his voice even further. "What's wrong? Afraid of a little street fight, Mike?" he hollered. His face was flushed in the cold air, whether from the chill or the heat of the moment. The circle of people had grown 3 deep, car headlights from the street now adding to the illumination as drivers slowed to watch the commotion. Dozens of camera phones were pointed at the two fighters like a battery of weapons ready to capture every second. The atmosphere crackled with electricity. For a long moment, Tyson simply stared at Jake. A tense silence fell over the street. In that pause, the distant wail of a siren echoed somewhere far off, and the neon sign above a closed bar hummed and flickered. The world seemed to hold its breath along with the crowd. Then Tyson stepped forward, closing the gap, until he was nearly chest to chest with Jake. The height difference was slight. Jake was tall and athletic in his youth, but Tyson, though shorter, was thick with muscle and decades of experience. They were close enough that Jake could see a faint scar above Tyson's right eye, and Tyson could see the sweat beading on Jake's temple. The sight of the old champion, so near, sent an involuntary jolt through Jake, a flash of memory he could not suppress. Ghosts of the last fight. Months ago, under very different lights, Jake had faced Tyson for the first time in an official boxing ring. The ghosts of that night still clung to him. In his mind's eye, he was back there, the deafening roar of 20,000 fans in an arena, the sting of sweat in his eyes, and the harsh white spotlights beaming down from above. He remembered the thud of Tyson's gloves against his arms as he desperately tried to guard his head, the ring floor shaking under his feet with each powerhouse blow. Tyson had come out of retirement for that bout, and many thought it was a spectacle, the YouTuber turned boxer versus the aging former champion. But in that ring, Jake quickly learned why Tyson was once called the baddest man on the planet. He could still feel it, that moment in the fifth round when Tyson's fist crashed into his ribs like a sledgehammer. The shockwave of pain nearly dropped Jake to his knees. He clinched, hanging on for dear life as the referee pried them apart. Jake recalled scattered voices from the crowd that night, some cheering his name, many others jeering or laughing when he staggered. He had entered that fight full of bluster, promising a knockout, hungry to prove himself to the world. Instead, he found himself on the defensive, each passing round chipping away at his confidence. In the seventh round came the decisive moment. Jake had swung a wild right hook, a last-ditch attempt to turn the tide, but Tyson slipped it with a veteran's ease. In a split-second counter, Tyson's right uppercut exploded upward. Jake could still picture the flash of blue-white arena lights as his vision blurred. The punch caught his jaw and sent him sprawling. The next thing he knew, he was on the canvas. His ears rang. The arena's roar was distant, as if underwater. He remembered blinking up at the blinding lights above, his body unwilling to obey as he tried to rise. The referee's count echoed in his skull. 7, 8, 9. Before the 10 count, Jake's corner threw in the towel. Defeat. Lying on his back in front of thousands, he felt fury and despair swell inside him. Fury at himself for failing, despair at the brutal reality crashing down on his pride. When he finally managed to sit up, he saw Tyson standing in a neutral corner, the referee holding up Tyson's arm in victory. The crowd was on its feet, a chaos of cheers and screams. And though Tyson had just dealt him a crushing loss, the older fighter's gaze was not gloating or cruel. Tyson looked at him almost respectfully, giving Jake a small nod across the ring as if to say, "You did okay, kid." That nod haunted Jake more than any taunt could have. In the weeks after, he couldn't escape it. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw Tyson's face, calm, almost compassionate, and it gnawed him. It would have been easier if Tyson had mocked him or rubbed it in. But Tyson's quiet respect felt like salt in the wound of Jake's pride. The world had seen Jake Paul lose. Late-night hosts joked about the cocky internet star getting humbled. In public, Jake laughed it off and vowed he'd be back. But in private, that fight replayed in an endless loop. Now, back on this midnight street, those memories surged through Jake in a split second. The humiliation, the pain, and that look on Tyson's face, all of it fueled the fire in his belly. This is my chance, he told himself, snapping back to the present. No judges, no refs, just me and him. Redemption or ruin, it would be decided right here under the streetlights, with the world watching through 100 tiny screens. Iron Will, Iron Mike. Tyson's blood hummed in his veins as he faced the young man barking challenges. For a moment, he simply watched Jake, measuring him with seasoned fighter's eyes. Damn, the kid's actually serious, he realized. In the strobing glare of headlights and camera flashes, Tyson saw the determination blazing on Jake's face. It was a look he'd seen on countless opponents in his prime, the look of a man with something to prove. Part of Tyson, the older, wiser part, almost felt sorry for him. He recognized the desperation beneath the bravado. Jake was like a young bull charging headfirst, not knowing the matador's sword awaited. At 58 years old, Mike Tyson had thought his days of street brawls were behind him. He'd worked to tame his temper and ego over the years, trading the wild impulses of youth for meditation and maturity. In his younger days, he might have swung at anyone who provoked him in a moment like this, and he had, more than once, to his regret. A flicker of memory crossed Tyson's mind. Decades ago, a late-night scuffle outside a Harlem shop, his fist breaking bone as easily as cracking a walnut. The headlines, the cops, the regret the morning after, he remembered it all. Never again, he had promised himself. He was a different man now, or so he wanted to believe. Yet here he was, confronted by a brash challenger under a street lamp glow, the smell of exhaust and city smoke in the air, a throng of people chanting for action. The adrenaline flooding Tyson's system felt both foreign and familiar. His muscles, long trained in the art of combat, tensed instinctively, recalling the rhythm of battle even without gloves. He took a slow breath, reining in the beast stirring inside. He didn't want this fight, not here, not outside the rules, but he sensed that Jake needed it. And if Tyson was honest with himself, a part of him needed it too. The warrior inside him, dormant but not dead, was awakening at the prospect of combat, however lopsided it might be. Tyson's dark eyes swept over the circle of spectators. He saw youthful faces lit by phone screens, mouths agape in anticipation. Some were even chanting, "Tyson, Tyson, in a low, rhythmic thrum, while others egged Jake on with shouts of "knock him out, Jake." The energy was infectious. If he walked away now, it might defuse everything. Maybe the right thing to do, but it would also unleash a storm of taunts and questions. He could already imagine the online narratives. Tyson chickens out, old champ too scared to fight Jake in the streets. It was ridiculous, but Tyson knew how the internet worked. And deep down, he was still a fighter. He had never backed down from a challenge in front of an audience, and he wasn't about to start now. He focused on Jake again. The kid was bouncing lightly on his toes, shaking out his arms, trying to stay loose. Tyson could tell Jake's adrenaline was spiking. His movements were a hair too quick, too jerky. He's nervous, Tyson realized. Nervous, angry, but committed. Jake's right fist was clenched so hard it trembled. Tyson recognized the tension. It meant Jake might throw big and early. Years of ring experience clicked into place. Tyson noted the distance between them, the uneven concrete beneath their feet instead of canvas, the tight press of the crowd leaving little room to maneuver. If this turned into a fight, it would be close quarters and quick. He rolled his neck slowly, a habit from countless pre-fight moments, and spoke in a low growl only Jake could hear over the crowd's buzz. "You really want to do this?" There was almost a hint of sadness in Tyson's question, buried under the steady gaze. Maybe, he hoped, the kid would blink and find a way out. But Jake's eyes only hardened. Tyson sighed. In that breath, he shed the last of his hesitation, letting the fighter in him take over. His stance shifted, right foot sliding back slightly, shoulders angling, a subtle change that Jake and every fight fan present would recognize as Iron Mike preparing for combat. A ripple of excitement coursed through the onlookers as they noticed Tyson's body language transform. The streetlight glinted off Tyson's bald head and the gold tooth at the corner of his grin as a faint smile tugged at his lips. Not a smile of joy, but of acknowledgement. All right then. He bounced once on the balls of his feet, feeling the solid ground beneath him. This was going to happen. All right, kid, Tyson rumbled, loud enough for those nearest to hear. You want it. You got it. Circle of light. The crowd pressed back with a collective gasp of excitement as the two fighters squared up in earnest. A few bystanders took charge, waving others to step away and make room. Give them space. Someone yelled. In moments, Jake and Tyson stood at the center of a roughly 10-foot circle of open pavement, surrounded by a wall of eager faces. The only illumination came from above and all sides, the amber street lamp overhead, the stark white of dozens of phone LEDs, and the piercing beams of car headlights that a quick-thinking spectator had angled toward the scene. The effect was eerily theatrical, a makeshift arena drawn in chalk and light, set not on canvas but cracked asphalt. Jake shrugged off the zip-up jacket of his red tracksuit and tossed it aside. Beneath, he wore a white tank top that clung to his sweat-sheen torso. His breaths came quick and visible in the chilly air. Across from him, Tyson reached over his head and peeled off his black hoodie in one fluid motion. A couple of people behind him stepped forward to grab it, revealing the ex-champion in just a dark T-shirt stretched over his broad chest. Even in the dim light, Tyson's arms looked as powerful as ever, thick and corded with muscle born from decades of combat. A murmur rippled through the crowd at the sight. Older or not, under that streetlight Mike Tyson still looked every inch a fighter. Both men began to circle slowly, testing the ground with careful steps. The smell of damp asphalt and a faint hint of spilled beer from a nearby gutter filled their noses. Jake wiped his palms on his pant legs and raised his fists to his chin. He bounced lightly on the balls of his feet, running through every scrap of boxing knowledge in his mind. His eyes never left Tyson. The older man's stance was loose but balanced, arms low, hands open for now. Tyson seemed relaxed, but Jake knew better. It was the kind of relax that comes before a cobra strikes. A charged hush fell over the spectators. The joking shouts and chatter for moments before it died down into tense silence. One could hear the shuffle of sneakers on grid as Jake and Tyson edged around each other. Under the streetlights, with camera flashes popping like distant lightning, both fighters were laser-focused. Jake rolled his shoulders and cracked his neck side to side. Tyson, expressionless, tilted his head imperceptibly, never breaking eye contact. For a brief second, Jake felt almost outside himself, as if watching this surreal scene from above. It looked like a movie, him in his red and white, Tyson in black, swirling smoke at their feet, a ring of faces in the dark, all illuminated by that harsh electric glow. In the silence, an engine revved somewhere down the block and a horn blared, but no one in the crowd paid it any mind. Every eye was on the two men about to collide. Jake's mind cleared. No more doubt, no more memory. This was real. He tightened his fists until his knuckles went white. Across from him, Tyson lowered his chin, eyes narrowing with lethal focus. It was time. Without another word, Jake darted forward and swung the first punch of the night. Clash of Titans. Jake's fist sliced through the cool night air, aimed straight at Tyson's head, a straight right launched with all the pin-up frustration in his soul. But Tyson was ready. With reflexes honed over a lifetime, he slipped to the side in a quick bop. Jake's punch whistled past Tyson's ear, hitting nothing but a wisp of smoke. The crowd erupted at the sight of that first strike, a chorus of shouts and whoops and, oh, all blending into chaos. Jake didn't hesitate. He planted his feet and let loose a flurry, a left jab snapping toward Tyson's nose, followed by another right hand. Tyson's feet danced backward on the pavement, light and sure. He brought up his left arm and parried Jake's jab with his forearm, then ducked under the arcing right. Jake snarled under his breath, pivoting to keep Tyson in front of him. His sneakers scraped on the gritty concrete as he adjusted and threw another 1-2 combination, this time aiming lower, toward Tyson's body. This sequence met solid resistance. Jake's left glove struck Tyson's raised forearms with a thump. The impact jolted up Jake's arm. He saw a slight opening as Tyson shifted, so he drove a straight punch at Tyson's midsection. This one connected, thudding into Tyson's abdomen just above the waistband. A collective gasp rose from the onlookers. Jake Paul had landed a shot on Mike Tyson. Tyson exhaled at the impact, absorbing it without a flinch. In the brief instant their eyes met, Jake thought he caught a glint of approval in Tyson's gaze. Not bad, Tyson muttered, so low only Jake could hear. The words barely registered in Jake's mind, but Tyson's lack of reaction to what Jake knew was a solid hit sent a trickle of doubt through him. If that was one of his best punches and it didn't even make Tyson blink, what would it take? Tyson decided to answer with action. As Jake retracted his fist, Tyson burst forward from his slight crouch. He whipped a short left hook toward Jake's jaw. It was quick as a blink. Jake only partly dodged. The punch clipped him on the side of the chin, not flush, but hard enough to send stars dancing in Jake's vision. He stumbled back a half step. A shocked cry rippled through the crowd. Even a glancing blow from Tyson carried frightening power. Jake felt a warm trickle on his lip. The hook had split it. Instinct and training took over. Jake snapped his gloves back up to guard his face, shaking off the daze. Tyson didn't rush in. He bounced lightly on his toes, eyes locked on Jake, measuring. Ever the predator, he was watching to see how hurt Jake was. Jake wiped his mouth with the back of his glove, smearing blood across it. A mix of anger and adrenaline spiked through him. He tasted Tyson's counter and stayed on his feet. That lit a defiant spark inside, a wild thrill that he could take the legend's punch, at least one. Come on, Jake, a voice from the crowd bellowed. That all you got, Tyson? Another heckled. The voices blurred into a wall of noise around him. In the center of that ring of bodies and light, Jake and Tyson might as well have been alone. They closed in again. Tyson snapped out a jab at Jake's face. Jake threw up an arm and managed to parry it, but the force of even that quick shot numbed his forearm. Jake countered with a looping hook aimed at Tyson's temple. Tyson leaned back just enough. Jake's red glove whooshed past his nose. Tyson retaliated immediately with a straight right toward Jake's head. Jake brought his left glove up just in time. Tyson's fist glanced off, smacking into Jake's shoulder and grazing his chin. Even partially deflected, it made Jake wince. Back and forth they went, trading blows under the neon-smeared night. The onlookers hollered with each exchange. Cheers when Jake swung or connected, gasps and odd shouts when Tyson's heavy hands found their mark. For a few fleeting moments, it almost looked even. Jake's youthful speed and sheer daring allowed him to hold his own against Tyson's veteran timing and power. The world narrowed to fists and footwork and the thunder of blood in their ears. Jake felt the sting of several shots, his forearms ached from blocking, and a dull throb in his ribs marked where Tyson snuck in a hard body blow. But Jake had his moments too. A sharp jab that grazed Tyson's cheek, a hook to Tyson's flank that earned a grunt. It wasn't much, but it was enough to keep hope flickering in Jake's chest. They broke apart for a second, circling again. Both men were breathing harder. The frosty air burned Jake's lungs. Sweat dripped down Tyson's temple. The taste of blood on Jake's tongue only fueled his determination. He blinked away the moisture threatening his eyes. Tyson remained a mask of concentration, but Jake noticed sweat on the champ's brow. Tyson was exerting himself, at least a little. Jake realized with mingled relief and dread that he was doing better here, in this chaotic street fight, than he had in the controlled ring months ago. The unpredictability and adrenaline of the street leveled the field, if only slightly. Still, he could feel himself tiring. How long could he keep this up before Tyson found a decisive opening? Red Fury unleashed. Jake knew trading blow for blow like this was a losing game. Tyson's punches, even when partly blocked, were wearing him down. A fiery ache spread across Jake's arms and ribs. His breathing was growing ragged. Tyson, ever composed, could weather this storm longer than he could. If Jake wanted any chance of turning the tables, he had to do something drastic now. A fierce resolve crystallized in Jake. Ignoring the pain screaming in his body, he charged Tyson with renewed fury. He fired a stiff jab, then another, driving Tyson back a step. Jake's sneakers squealed on the pavement as he planted and swung a hard right hook at Tyson's flank. Tyson anticipated a high punch and had slightly raised his guard. Jake's glove slammed into Tyson's side with a satisfying whump. Tyson grunted. Sensing an opening, Jake didn't let up. He became a whirlwind of red and white, throwing punches in bunches. Left, right, left. Jake hurled strikes from every angle, desperation fueling his speed. Tyson brought his guard up high, blocking his head as Jake's fists drummed against his forearms and gloves. Each impact was a dull thwop-thwop that echoed off the buildings. The crowd's energy surged at the sight of Jake's onslaught. "Hit him, Jake!" someone shrieked. The ring of spectators tightened, people pushing closer unconsciously as excitement overtook them. Tyson found himself giving ground under the barrage. The raw ferocity of Jake's attack was unexpected. Even if most blows thudded into Tyson's arms and shoulders, the sheer volume kept him from countering immediately. He took another step back, his heel skidding on a discarded plastic cup with a crunch. For the first time, Tyson's footing looked unsure. Camera flashes went into overdrive. Anyone capturing this moment would see Jake Paul advancing and the legendary Mike Tyson momentarily on the defensive. Teeth bared in a feral grin, Jake swung a wild uppercut aimed for Tyson's chin. Tyson reacted a fraction too slow. Jake's fist grazed the bottom of Tyson's chin, enough to snap the older fighter's head back. A collective gasp erupted from the crowd, that sound an audience makes when they think they're seeing the impossible. Tyson staggered one step. In the glare of a dozen lights, Jake saw a spray of sweat, maybe even a bit of blood, fly from Tyson's mouth and fleck the pavement. He didn't know if it was from a cut lip or just spittle knocked loose, but it didn't matter. It was proof Tyson could be touched. Jake's heart soared. For the first time, real hope ignited in Jake's chest. A wild cheer went up around them. People were shouting in disbelief. He had managed to draw blood from Iron Mike. "This is my moment," his mind screamed. With a roar, Jake pressed his advantage, determined to put Tyson down before the opportunity slipped. He heaved another right hand, aiming to finally topple the Titan. But adrenaline is a double-edged sword. Jake's swings were growing sloppy as exhaustion crept in. This right hand sailed wide as Tyson swayed back just in time, the glove slicing through empty air inches from Tyson's nose. Jake had thrown everything into that punch. The miss wrenched him off balance, his momentum carrying him forward awkwardly. He stumbled, feet tangling for an instant. Tyson's eyes flashed. He saw his opening. In Jake's overzealous rush, the younger man had left himself completely exposed. His arm was down from the missed punch, his body leaned too far forward. Jake's chest heaved, his arms suddenly felt like lead. The rush of his momentary high ebbed, replaced by a stab of fear. He met Tyson's gaze and in it saw a lethal focus. In that split second of overextension, time seemed to slow. The veteran had weathered the storm, and now the counterstorm was about to break. Overwhelmed, Tyson moved with explosive swiftness. In that frozen heartbeat after Jake's miss, the heavyweight legend uncoiled. Tyson's right fist arced in a brutal hook, plowing into Jake's side just below the ribs. It landed with a sickening thud. White-hot pain lanced through Jake's torso. The wind rushed out of his lungs in a choked gasp. The crowd's roar became a muffled blur as Jake doubled over, an arm dropping to cradle his ribs. Before Jake could even think to recover, Tyson followed up. With Jake bent forward, Tyson twisted and drove a thunderous left uppercut up from his knees. Jake caught a glimpse of Tyson's fist rocketing toward him an eye blink before it connected, a flash of glove and fury coming straight from hell. It crashed into Jake's chin full force. The night literally flashed white in Jake's vision. His feet left the ground. That punch lifted him, at least for a split second, clear off the pavement. An instant later, Jake's back and shoulders hit the hard ground with a jarring impact. The world tilted. He was staring up at the sky. The fall slammed whatever breath he had left out of him. For a moment he heard nothing at all. A pure, high-pitched ringing drowned the world. The streetlight above swirled in his sight. Tiny motes of dust and vapor drifted across its glow. Beyond the halo of light, the stars winked in the black sky. The scene was eerily familiar. The angle, the brightness. It was just like that night in the ring. Here I am again, flat on my back under the lights, he thought dimly. His body was an orchestra of pain. The hook to his ribs sent splinters of agony through his core. He wondered distantly if a rib had cracked. His jaw blazed from the uppercut, a numb sort of burn. He tried to will his limbs to move, to respond, to do something, but the signals from his brain seemed lost. His arms twitched feebly, refusing to obey. Tyson loomed into view, stepping closer. Jake blinked, trying to focus through the haze. He half expected another blow to finish the job, but it never came. Tyson stood over him, chest heaving, fist still at the ready, but no longer raised. The older fighter's face was hard to read with the streetlight halo behind him. But Tyson didn't advance. He was simply waiting, watching. The fight was over. Everyone knew it. A hush fell, blanketing the street in surreal quiet after the frenzy of violence. Only the distant honk of a car and the crackle of someone's music from down the block punctuated the silence. The crowd stared, stunned. Phones still held aloft, capturing the image of Jake Paul sprawled on the ground and Mike Tyson standing victorious. Jake's vision wavered. He heard fragments of shouts breaking through the ringing in his ears. Holy shit. He's down. Tyson did it. Mixed with them were nearer, frantic voices. One was his friend from before, now yelling, Jake. Jake, you okay? A groan escaped Jake's lips as he rolled onto his side, coughing. Each ragged breath stabbed at his ribs. He felt a hand on his shoulder, someone from his team, or a brave bystander, he wasn't sure. The metallic taste of blood filled his mouth. As his head cleared just a fraction, a swell of emotions fought through him. Humiliation, sorrow, and strangely, relief. He had given everything. It simply hadn't been enough. Above him, Tyson finally spoke in a voice quiet and firm, cutting through the murmurs. Stay down, kid, he said. There was no gloat, no anger, almost a gentle sternness. And Jake, dizzy and beaten, had no intention of doing otherwise. Truth be told, he couldn't get up at that moment even if he wanted to. His body had reached its limit. Then Tyson did something unexpected. He extended his hand down toward Jake. Through the blur, Jake saw that big glove opening in front of him, offering help. He blinked, unsure if he was imagining it. The silhouette of Tyson's outstretched hand hovered in front of him. After the storm, Jake hesitated, then reached up and grasped Tyson's outstretched hand. With a firm grip, Tyson pulled the younger man to his feet. Jake swayed, and Tyson steadied him, holding on until Jake found his balance. A burst of applause and cheers erupted from the crowd, a cathartic release after the intense showdown. For a moment, the two stood face to face under the streetlight, not as adversaries, but with a mutual respect forged in combat. Jake's voice was hoarse and trembling as he managed, thank you. Whether he meant for the fight or the help was unclear, but Tyson nodded nonetheless. The older fighter placed a heavy hand on Jake's shoulder. You've got heart, kid, Tyson said quietly, almost in Jake's ear. But that's enough for tonight. There was no scorn in his tone, only a gentle finality. Jake nodded in understanding, his eyes stinging, from pain or emotion, he couldn't tell. Tyson gave Jake's shoulder a reassuring pat, then turned to go as the distant wail of sirens grew nearer. A few of Tyson's entourage members had appeared and were motioning urgently for him. Tyson lifted one arm to acknowledge the still cheering onlookers, a quick wave and an understated smile. Then, with the same calm dignity he had shown all night, the former champion strode through the parting crowd. In moments, he disappeared into the darkness beyond the neon glow, heading toward a black car that had pulled up down the street. Only once Tyson was gone did Jake's team rush forward to catch him as his knees buckled. Strong arms kept him from collapsing, easing him back down onto the curb. Jake, you all right? One of his trainers asked, voice tight with concern. Jake managed a weak grin, coughing as he fought to get a full breath. I'll live, he rasped, tasting blood but forcing a bit of humor into his words. As he sat dazed on the cold concrete, a few bystanders stepped closer with hesitant pats on the back and words of praise. Hell of a fight, man, murmured one, handing Jake a half-full water bottle. Jake nodded in thanks and took a sip, washing the metallic taste from his mouth. He couldn't help but notice how different this was from the jeers and laughter that followed his first match with Tyson. Tonight, in the eyes of these onlookers, he saw not ridicule but a measure of admiration. The sirens grew louder, red and blue lights flashing at the end of the block. The spell of the moment was breaking. 2 police officers emerged from their cruiser and began moving people aside, their voices calling for everyone to clear the area. Jake knew the authorities would be on them in seconds. With a groan and the help of his coach, Jake struggled back to his feet. Every muscle protested, and pain flared hot in his ribcage, but he stood up before the cops reached him. He had taken his beating. He would take the aftermath standing as well. In the grand scheme, he knew, the coming days would be filled with noise. By morning, footage of this street fight would flood every corner of the internet. Pundits would argue, fans would rejoice or criticize, the world would buzz about Jake Paul and Mike Tyson all over again. But beyond that cacophony, something fundamental had shifted inside Jake. He had come here chasing a triumphant redemption, desperate to erase the memory of his defeat. Instead, he found a different kind of redemption. Not a victory over Tyson, but a victory over his own doubt. He now knew he could stare down his greatest fear, the fear of inadequacy and public failure, and survive. In meeting Tyson's dominance with courage, even in defeat, he had earned the very thing he sought: respect. Respect from others, and more importantly, respect for himself. Under the fading glow of the streetlights, Jake allowed himself one last glance toward the empty space where Tyson had stood. The night felt strangely peaceful now. Drawing a slow, ragged breath, Jake whispered aloud to himself, "Next time, I'll be better." It wasn't a boast or a challenge, just a humble promise carried into the darkness. As his team led him toward a waiting ambulance beyond the ring of curious faces and flashing lights, Jake knew that this night, this extraordinary showdown under the streetlights, had changed him more deeply than any victory ever could.